The sea does not forget. Its surface may seem calm, but its depths hold stories sealed by time. Steel vanishes. Wood breaks apart. Names are spoken once, then never again. For centuries, ships have slipped into fog, into ice, into silence. They left no trace, only questions. Why did no one call for help? Why did the lights stay on after the crew was gone? Why did some ships return with their engines still running, but no one aboard to steer them? Each one begins the same way. A calm departure, familiar waters, a known course. But something waits beyond the horizon, and what is lost beneath the waves rarely returns whole. This is not a story of shipwrecks. It is a story of absences, and of the quiet places where answers no longer rise. Join us as we follow the trail of vessels that vanished, and disasters that left only silence behind. Shadows on the silent waters. At dawn on April 14, 1912, the RMS Titanic lay across the ocean, hidden by fog. The air held a hush that seemed endless. The ship's name glowed faintly under the early light. Passengers moved with quiet steps on the decks. Some watched stars slipping away. Others listened to the slow rhythm of waves. The Titanic carried over 2,200 people. Many carried small trunks and letters. They spoke little. Meals were served in soft tones. Staff in white coats offered tea at 6 a.m., just as the ice made small cracks in the sea near the hull. The iceberg struck at 11:40 p.m. In that hour, when time slipped like water, the hull fractured. Water seeped in silent lines. The lights flickered once, then steadied. People leaned against rails. Some held children close. Boats were lowered. There were 20 lifeboats and 4 collapsible rafts. Many remained half empty. A woman whispered, "It's fine." An officer replied, "We will return soon." That promise drifted in cold air. The sea did not accept such words. It hovered in blind motion. The ship broke in two around 2:20 a.m., April 15, 1912. In silence, it slipped under. No grand farewell, no fanfare. In the dark water, nearly 1,500 souls did not reach the boats. Sounds faded. A whistle sounded once, deep in the wrecked structure, then mute. The survivors floated in quiet clusters on rafts. The Carpathia arrived around 4 a.m. It brought blankets, silence, and distant light. Some lay still. Others sat holding hands. The ship moved steadily toward New York. That day, mothers sat at tables in quiet cabins. Fathers stared at windows. The waves moved in circles beyond. Notices were posted at Harland Wolff Shipyard in Belfast. Families came to see the empty slips. The yard, built for giants, felt small. Over weeks, lists of passengers filled pages. Names like Margaret Brown, Edward Smith, Molly Brown. Workers recorded each name in ledger books. News traveled slowly. Reports on April 16 spoke of tragedy. Newspapers printed numbers. They printed quotes. One said, "All hope is lost." Another said, "The sea claimed them." Words placed weight in empty rooms. Yet, over time, names were lost. Lives condensed to data. 1,517 lost, 705 saved. Elsewhere, in calm seas, other vessels carried normal loads. That night, the ocean held stories unknown. Small liners, freighters, sailboats all drifted. None carried that ghost ship. None carried that promise of return. Long later, in 1985, The wreck was found nearly 2.5 miles down by Robert Ballard. He called it fragile. The hull lay broken at 12,500 feet depth. A steel scar above an open crack revealed emptiness. No noise came through. The cameras hovered as though in prayer. Ballard whispered, "She holds her time." No more grand tones. The ship rests. It waits. In quiet rooms, films show the deck's railings. They are bent. Small personal items litter the floor. A shoe, a comb, bits of china. Rust has claimed them. The cold holds them still. Divers make no sudden moves. Their lights glide. The frames move past silent cabins. No one speaks. That wreck lies on the floor of the North Atlantic, where darkness is endless. It waits for currents. It waits for quiet. It waits for nothing else. Ships still sail across that stretch. They carry containers, travelers, goods. Few know that beneath lies a ghost. The ocean hides such things. Its surface looks peaceful. The moon's reflection lies in smooth arcs. The waves look soft. The sea seems calm. But beneath, the Titanic remains. Its name lies in rusted letters curved toward the ocean floor. It writes no stories. It waits in black water. The vanished signal of the SS Waratah. In July of 1909, a steamship named SS Waratah left the port of Durban, South Africa. It was a new vessel, only 1 year old. Built in Glasgow by Barclay Curle and Company, it measured 465 feet long and had accommodation for over 750 passengers. On paper, it was a strong ship. It had twin decks, triple expansion engines, and electric lights in all cabins. The Waratah carried wool, foodstuffs, gold bars, and passengers returning to England. The ship departed Durban on the 26th of July. There were 211 people on board. Among them were families, missionaries, clerks, and shipping agents. The weather was calm. The sea looked friendly. Children played cards on the promenade. A piano in the lounge played low songs. Few suspected anything strange. The Waratah was last seen near the mouth of the Bashi River. Another ship, the Clan McIntyre, passed it in the early morning fog. The Waratah appeared stable. A man on the deck waved. Then the fog swallowed the ship. The Clan McIntyre continued north. Later that day, skies turned grey. Winds rose along the Transkei coast. By nightfall, waves reached 30 feet. The wind shifted into a gale. The Waratah never arrived in Cape Town. Telegraph stations in Cape Town waited for the ship's signal. Nothing came. It had no wireless transmitter. News spread slowly. On the 1st of August, search ships were dispatched. The HMS Pandora searched along the coastline. The vessel sent up flares and scanned each inlet. Nothing appeared. The sea returned nothing. The coast remained quiet. Over the next weeks, theories multiplied. Some said it had capsized. Others said it had struck a submerged reef. A few believed it had continued into the Indian Ocean. Ships were rerouted to avoid imagined dangers. Insurance agents recorded the loss as total. In London, the Lloyd's Register marked the Waratah as missing, presumed lost. The date of final disappearance was listed as the 28th of July, 1909. There were no survivors. No lifeboats were found. No luggage. No cargo. The sea had taken it completely. A woman named Hilda Atwell had sent a letter the night before boarding. It arrived in England after the ship vanished. She wrote, "We sail at dawn. The ship is beautiful." That was her last known sentence. Years passed. From 1910 to 1913, private search expeditions combed the coast of South Africa. One diver claimed to have found debris. Another described wreckage with blue and white tiles, like those on the Waratah. None were verified. By 1920, most believed the wreck would never be found. In 1977, author David L. Williams suggested that the Waratah may have been top-heavy. Its stability had been questioned before. Witnesses on the maiden voyage described it rolling unpredictably. A passenger had disembarked in Durban out of fear. He said, "It rolls like no other ship I've known." Yet engineers assured everyone it was within safe limits. In 1999, a joint South African-Australian team led by Emlyn Brown announced a new expedition. They used sonar equipment to scan the seafloor. They located a wreck at a depth of 650 feet, 10 miles offshore. But further investigation revealed it was not the Waratah. It was an older cargo ship. The ocean offered another decoy. Brown searched for over 20 years. In an interview, he said, "I am certain the Waratah is there, but she hides well." His final search ended in 2004. Funding stopped. The sea resumed its stillness. The Waratah has never been recovered. No trace has ever reached land. It remains one of the largest passenger vessels to vanish without a known cause. It did not send a mayday. It did not release flares. The passengers left no final words. The water erased everything. The disappearance became part of maritime tradition. Sailors called that stretch of sea the Wild Coast. Locals told stories of a ghost ship seen in fog, always headed south, always silent. To this day, no one knows what happened between Durban and Cape Town. The space is only 800 miles. The ship was modern and the crew experienced. Yet somewhere in those waters, the Waratah disappeared. Its name means red flowering tree in the language of the Eora people. But at sea, its colour faded. Its flowers never bloomed again. The smoke that rose from the Morro Castle. The Morro Castle was a steel-hulled ocean liner operated by the Ward Line. It was built in 1930 by the Newport News Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Company in Virginia. The ship measured 508 feet in length. It carried passengers between New York and Havana. On the 5th of September 1934, the Morro Castle left Havana on its usual route north. There were 318 people on board. Most were American tourists. The weather was normal. Winds were low. Seas were quiet. Passengers gathered in the dining hall. A jazz band played soft music. Drinks were served in silver cups. The ship moved at a steady speed of 19 knots. Lights on the promenade reflected across calm water. The air was warm. Children played cards on deck chairs. There were no signs of trouble. At 7:45 p.m., the ship's captain, Robert R. Wilmot, complained of stomach pain. He was helped to his cabin. He died a few hours later. Officially, the cause was listed as a heart attack. Command passed to Chief Officer William F. Worms. He had never commanded the vessel alone. His style was different. He made no announcements. The ship continued without pause. At 2:50 a.m. on the 8th of September, a steward noticed smoke near the writing room on B deck. The smoke spread quickly. Within minutes, flames climbed to the upper decks. Fire alarms rang. Crew members rushed to alert sleeping passengers. Some cabin doors were stuck. Many passengers remained unaware until smoke entered their rooms. The fire spread faster than expected. Lifeboat stations became crowded. Panic spread quietly. There were no drills. The ship had 8 lifeboats. Only 6 were successfully launched. Some crew members took lifeboats before all passengers were assisted. Other crew members remained at their posts. Conflicting reports emerged later. The ship's wireless operator, George Rogers, continued sending distress calls. He stayed at his station until the flames surrounded him. His final message read, "SOS, Morro Castle, off Asbury Park, fire. The signal was received by nearby vessels. The Andrea F. Luckenbach and the Monarch of Bermuda responded. They approached the burning ship cautiously. By the time rescuers arrived, many passengers had jumped into the sea. The water temperature was 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Some clung to debris, others drowned. The lifeboats were scattered across the waves. Small fishing boats from New Jersey joined the rescue. The beach at Asbury Park filled with people watching the orange glow on the horizon. By dawn, the Morro Castle drifted ashore. It grounded itself in shallow water, just 500 feet from the boardwalk. Black smoke continued to rise. Flames smoldered for hours. The ship's hull leaned to one side. Crowds gathered on the beach. Photographers took pictures. Children pointed at the wreck. Some said it looked like a building floating on fire. In total, 137 people died, most from smoke inhalation or burns. Others drowned before help arrived. The fire had started in a storage locker, but its cause remained unknown. Investigators later found evidence of accelerants. Some suspected arson. George Rogers, the radio operator, was hailed as a hero. Years later, he was convicted of murder in an unrelated case. The contrast puzzled many. Some questioned whether he had played a role in the fire. No charges were ever filed regarding the Morro Castle. The ship remained grounded for 6 months. Children played near it. Tourists took photos. Workers salvaged metal. Finally, it was towed away and dismantled in Baltimore, but its shadow remained in memory. The fire changed safety rules for passenger vessels. New standards required fireproof materials, better alarms, and clearer evacuation plans. But at the time, none of that helped the 137 who were lost. Their names were carved into headstones. Their stories faded. The beach at Asbury Park returned to normal. Sand covered the marks left by the hull. The ocean erased its trace, but in old postcards and silent newsreels, the Morro Castle still burns. It floats just offshore, its black smoke rising without sound. The Ghost Ship of Kamchatka. On the 24th of August, 1983, a small American reconnaissance aircraft spotted a drifting freighter in the Bering Sea. The vessel was listing slightly to the starboard side. Its decks were empty. No signals came from it. The ship carried no flag. There were no visible crew members. The pilot marked the coordinates and radioed it in. The United States Coast Guard dispatched a cutter from Dutch Harbour. It took nearly 14 hours to reach the location. When they arrived, the vessel was still moving, pulled gently by the current. It was rusted, paint peeled from its sides. The name on the stern was partially scraped off. What remained read only Bakov in Cyrillic. It was presumed to have once read Kubob Lubo Kunu, Lyubov Orlova. The Coast Guard crew approached slowly. The ship did not respond to radio hails. A small team boarded it. Their boots echoed down the empty hallways. There was no power, no movement. The cabins were open, beds were unmade, kitchen drawers were pulled out. There was a half-melted bar of soap still in the bathroom, but there was no sign of human life. No bodies, no blood, no notes. Logbooks were missing. The navigation equipment had been damaged. Some items were missing: radios, personal bags, jackets. The only remaining documents were water-damaged Soviet charts of the North Pacific. One had been folded tightly and left in the captain's drawer. The cargo holds were empty. There were signs they had once held machinery or sealed crates. The shipping company could not be identified. The vessel's registration number had been scraped off every plate. The Coast Guard marked it as an orphaned freighter. A few photographs were taken. Then they towed it slowly to Adak Island. The ship was approximately 330 feet long. Based on measurements and hull design, it matched several small-scale Soviet cargo vessels used in the late 1972. Experts believed it had departed from Kamchatka. No Soviet company would claim ownership. Moscow issued no statement. The crew was never found. Some said the ship had been abandoned after mechanical failure. Others speculated about covert operations. There were no signs of fire or flooding. The bilge was dry. There were no escape rafts aboard. No distress flares had been used. One Coast Guard officer noted that the mess hall still held cups on the table. A kettle was burned dry on the stove. He wrote, "It's as if they all stood up at once and disappeared." His note was filed but not investigated further. By early September, the Lyubov Orlova was declared a derelict. Salvage companies showed no interest. The US Navy requested access but did not disclose findings. After 11 days at Adak, the vessel was towed into deeper waters and sunk. No public record exists of the exact coordinates. A Soviet naval journal later published a small item in 1984. It stated, "A scientific supply vessel has failed to return from Arctic observation." No name was mentioned. No crew list was included. The article was not reprinted. In following years, reports emerged from Japanese fishing vessels. They described seeing a similar freighter drifting far to the north, near the Chukchi Sea. Always with no lights. Always silent. One crew claimed they saw movement on the bridge. Another said they heard voices on the radio that stopped mid-sentence. These claims were never verified. By 1990, the incident had faded from memory. There was no formal inquiry. No relatives came forward. The ship, unofficially known as the Ghost of Kamchatka, remained an unsolved case. Its route, its cargo, and its crew remain undocumented. Oceanographers later studied current maps and determined that the vessel could have drifted from the Sea of Okhotsk to the Bering Strait over several weeks. But this did not explain the missing logbooks or the intact mess hall. One researcher said, "The ocean holds secrets well. This is one." The Coast Guard officer who first boarded the ship retired in 1997. In an interview, he said, "It was the quietest thing I've ever walked into. No sound, no smell, just cold metal and empty beds. That stays with you. There are no plaques, no memorials, no record of the crew. Only an incident report filed in a box marked inactive, 1983. The ship exists now only in 2 blurred photographs and the fading memory of those who saw it. The waters where it was found remain quiet. Cargo vessels still pass through. Tankers trace the northern edge of the Aleutian Islands. None report anything unusual. The sea holds no reminders. Yet sometimes, in the winter months, local radio operators in western Alaska say they pick up faint clicks on unused frequencies. No pattern, no voice, just pulses, then silence. The name Lyubov Orlova is shared with another Soviet cruise ship abandoned decades later in the North Atlantic. The name repeats, the story does not. That second ship also vanished. The ocean does not explain these things, it simply receives. The oil that burned the ocean. The MV Derbyshire was built in 1976. It measured 964 feet in length and weighed over 169,000 tons. It was classified as an all-bulk oil carrier, or OBO. This meant it could carry either oil, bulk ore, or grain. The ship belonged to Bibby Line and was registered in Liverpool, England. It was the largest British merchant ship ever lost at sea. On July 11, 1980, the Derbyshire departed from Septend-Îles, Quebec, carrying over 157,000 tons of iron ore concentrate. Its destination was Kawasaki, Japan. The crew consisted of 42 men and 2 women. All were British. The sea conditions were normal for the Atlantic crossing. The ship passed through the Panama Canal without delay. Radio checks were conducted regularly. No mechanical problems were reported. On September 9, the ship entered the Western Pacific. Typhoon Orchid had formed several days earlier near the Philippines. By the time it reached the East China Sea, winds were reaching 115 miles per hour. The typhoon moved slowly, carrying intense rain. Waves reached 60 feet. The Derbyshire reported its position northeast of Okinawa at 7 a.m., September 9. That was its final communication. When the ship failed to arrive in Kawasaki on schedule, the Bibi Line issued a distress bulletin. Search efforts began on September 15. The British and Japanese navies conducted aerial sweeps. They found no oil slick, no life rafts, no wreckage. Only a single life buoy was later recovered, 350 miles from the expected route. All 44 people aboard were declared lost. The sinking was unexplained. The ship was modern. Its hull was strengthened to withstand severe weather. No distress signal had been sent. There were no witnesses, no survivors. In 1987, after pressure from the National Union of Seamen and the families of the crew, an official inquiry was launched in the UK. The initial investigation concluded that the ship had encountered extreme weather and probably broke apart. No fault was assigned to the vessel's construction. No design flaws were identified. The report was brief. Family members disagreed. They pointed to earlier concerns about the vessel class. 6 other OBOs had previously suffered structural damage. In 1980, the Derbyshire was the 7th to disappear. The Maritime Union hired an independent surveyor. He reviewed past maintenance logs and concluded the ship's hatch covers may have failed under stress. Heavy rainfall and high seas could have forced water into the holds. Once inside, the water would have shifted the ore and created a chain reaction of stress on the hull. This theory led to renewed calls for a deep-sea search. In 1994, the UK government approved a joint expedition with the International Transport Workers Federation. The search team used sonar and remotely operated vehicles. They located the wreck in June of that year. It lay at a depth of 13,000 feet southeast of Okinawa. The ship had broken into multiple sections. The wreckage showed signs of structural collapse. Hatch covers had imploded inward. The bow was separated from the rest of the hull. Investigators concluded that water had entered through the forward cargo holds. The pressure had caused the deck plating to fail. The ship had sunk quickly, too fast for any emergency transmission. In 2000, a formal reopening of the inquiry confirmed this sequence. The report stated that the design of the hatch covers had not accounted for extreme wave pressure. The findings led to changes in maritime safety regulations. New rules required stronger hatch covers and improved weather routing. But these changes came too late for the Derbyshire. Among the crew were young cadets, some just 16 years old. Their names were read aloud at memorial services in Liverpool. No bodies were recovered. No personal effects were found. Only twisted metal, grainy photographs of the seafloor, and sonar maps of the wreck remain. Today, the Derbyshire lies in deep water. Its hull is corroded. The bow leans slightly to one side. ROVs occasionally pass over it for training. No salvage operations have been approved. It is now considered a war grave, though there was no war. Only pressure, steel, and silence. The typhoon that struck it dissipated 3 days later. Its winds died. Its waves subsided. Weather satellites now monitor that region hourly. Ships are diverted early. Forecasting has improved. But each new typhoon passes over the wreck, unaware of what lies below. The Derbyshire is not mentioned often in textbooks. It did not catch fire. It did not drift. It did not call for help. It simply disappeared, then waited to be found. The ocean allowed its discovery only after 14 years. Until then, it gave no clues. Now, it lies broken. The iron ore is still inside. The depths that pulled the Cyclops. In March of 1918, a US Navy ship named the USS Cyclops left the port of Barbados. It was last seen moving north into the open Atlantic. The sky was pale, the water flat. The ship made no signal. It did not arrive at its destination. The Cyclops had been launched in 1910. It was 542 feet long and weighed over 19,000 tons. Designed as a collier, its purpose was to carry coal to naval stations around the world. In March 1918, it carried 10,800 tons of manganese ore. The ore was heavy, dense. It was used to harden steel. There were 306 people aboard. This included crew, Navy officers, and passengers returning to the United States. The ship had departed from Rio de Janeiro in mid-February. It had made a brief stop in Bahia. Then it travelled to Barbados, where it docked for 2 days. On the 4th of March, it left for Baltimore. It was never seen again. No wireless transmission was recorded. No flares were observed. No lifeboats were found. There was no oil slick. The ship had disappeared somewhere along the 1,800-mile route between the Caribbean and the East Coast. Weather reports indicated calm conditions. No storms were logged in the region at that time. The ship's captain, George W. Worley, was noted for his strict manner. He had commanded the vessel for several years. Some crew members had lodged complaints about discipline, but none were formal. He had inspected the ship before departure. He noted no mechanical issues. The Navy conducted an extensive search. Aircraft scanned the seas near the Bahamas. Ships followed the projected route. Weeks passed. No debris surfaced. The official report from the Naval Investigation Board stated, "The disappearance of this vessel is one of the most baffling mysteries in the annals of the Navy Department." Theories followed. One proposed that the manganese ore had shifted inside the cargo holds, causing the ship to capsize. Others suggested the ship was sabotaged by enemy agents. It was wartime. German submarines were active in the Atlantic. But no U-boat commander ever claimed the kill. No intercepted communications mentioned the ship. Another idea was structural failure. The Cyclops had a known tendency to roll in heavy seas. In 1917, a sister ship, the USS Proteus, reported metal fatigue in the hull. Yet the sea was calm when the Cyclops vanished. No unusual wave activity was reported. In 1941, the Proteus and another sister ship, the USS Nereus, also disappeared without trace. Both carried ore. Both sailed through similar waters. No distress signals were sent. These cases mirrored the Cyclops in detail. Over time, the disappearances became associated with the area now called the Bermuda Triangle, a zone between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. Many ships and aircraft have vanished there. No scientific explanation has been confirmed. Some link the region's magnetic fields to navigational errors. Others cite methane hydrate eruptions. The seafloor in that region is steep, with trenches reaching over 27,000 feet. A ship sinking here might leave no sign. In 2009, a research vessel using sonar equipment mapped a section of the seafloor northeast of Puerto Rico. No wrecks were identified. The Cyclops was not found. Personal accounts remain limited. Letters from passengers stopped in Barbados. One sailor wrote to his mother, "We sail at dawn. We'll write again soon." His name was not included in official memorials until 1920. The loss of the Cyclops was the single largest loss of life in US Navy history outside of combat. For years, families hoped for answers. None came. The ship was declared officially lost. A bronze plaque was placed at the Navy Yard in Norfolk. It lists only the name, USS Cyclops. No further detail. Books mention it briefly. Textbooks list the tonnage. Some newspapers reprint the manifest. But there are no artifacts, no logbooks, no survivors. The manganese ore, dense and unmarked, rests in silence somewhere on the ocean floor. The ship's last confirmed sighting was near the island of Street Kitts. A merchant vessel saw it moving slowly, smoke trailing from a single funnel. A man on the deck raised a hand in casual greeting. The Cyclops turned west, then disappeared. No further visual contact occurred. Some say the ship broke apart. Others say it is buried in a trench, compressed by pressure. A few suggest it never sank, that it was repurposed under another name. But these are speculations. The sea keeps what it takes. Modern efforts to locate the wreck have been sparse. The region remains difficult to scan. Silt clouds rise from the bottom, and sound waves lose clarity. Drones cannot reach the deepest parts. The ship's fate remains unknown. Its final minutes are unrecorded. No voice described what happened. No log entry marked the hour. The ocean is flat above the place it vanished. Fish pass without notice. Currents roll in silent patterns. If the Cyclops rests there, it does so without a trace. The fire that followed the Halifax explosion. On the morning of the 6th of December, 1917, two ships moved through the narrows of Halifax Harbour in Nova Scotia, Canada. One was the SS Mont Blanc, a French cargo ship loaded with explosives. The other, the Norwegian vessel SS Imo, was departing for New York. The harbour was busy. Wartime shipping had increased. Traffic moved in slow lines. The Mont Blanc had departed from New York. It carried picric acid, Tennessee tea, gun cotton, and barrels of benzol stored on deck. It was bound for Bordeaux. Because of its cargo, the ship flew no warning flags. German submarines had been spotted off the coast. The captain feared the signal might draw attention. The Imo, meanwhile, had waited 2 days for coal. Its departure was delayed. Its captain was eager to move out. At 8:45 a.m., the two ships approached the Narrows from opposite sides. The Mont Blanc had the right of way. The Imo moved too far to port. Horns were blown. Crews shouted. A misjudgment in steering led the Imo to strike the Mont Blanc on its starboard side. The impact was not violent. Both ships stopped, but sparks from the metal scrape ignited the benzol. Fire broke out immediately. The crew of the Mont Blanc abandoned ship. They rowed to shore, shouting warnings. No one understood. Many on land stood watching. They saw fire on the deck, black smoke rising slowly. Within minutes, crowds gathered at the harbour's edge. School children pointed. Workers paused. Fire crews moved toward the wharf. At 9:04 a.m., the Mont Blanc exploded. The blast was the largest non-nuclear explosion in human history at the time. It released energy equal to nearly 3 kilotons of TNT. The ship disintegrated. A 3-ton anchor was thrown over 2 miles. A section of the Mont Blanc's gun barrel landed on the Dartmouth shore. A shockwave flattened buildings across Halifax. More than 1,600 people were killed instantly. Windows shattered in towns over 30 miles away. A tsunami followed the blast. Water rushed into the harbour, sweeping away small vessels, docks and buildings. The fire that followed consumed parts of the city for 2 days. The Norwegian ship Imo was pushed ashore by the wave. Its hull was cracked. Several crew members died. The ship was later repaired and returned to service under a new name. At the centre of the explosion, no trace of the Mont Blanc remained. It had been turned into fragments. Iron splinters fell like rain. Many survivors described a silence immediately after the blast. Then came the wind. Then came the fire. Relief efforts began within hours. The Canadian military arrived first, then the American Red Cross. Supplies came by train from Boston. By nightfall, snow began to fall. Temperatures dropped below freezing. The dead were laid in rows. Names were recorded in ledgers. Many were never identified. In the days after the explosion, attention turned to the cause. Some blamed the Imo, others blamed the Mont Blanc's captain. A formal inquiry was held. no clear conclusion was reached. In wartime, responsibilities were blurred. The harbour was closed for weeks. Divers cleared wreckage under heavy silt. Salvage workers found twisted metal, scorched timber, and human remains. The water near the blast site remained cloudy for months. The sea floor had changed. Fish disappeared. Rocks had shifted. Channels had narrowed. The Mont Blanc's cargo had vaporized. Its final position was never marked. The ship had come into the harbour, then vanished. Years later, small pieces of the ship were still found buried in gardens and streets. A steel shard was discovered embedded in the wall of a church. It had flown half a mile. The Halifax explosion changed maritime safety in Canadian waters. Ships carrying hazardous materials were required to declare their cargo. Port authorities created new signalling rules. Fire drills became routine. But the Mont Blanc story faded. Few speak of it today as a sea disaster. Yet it began with 2 ships. It ended in silence. The Narrows were rebuilt. Shipping resumed. Buildings rose on the shoreline. But beneath the water, where the Mont Blanc exploded, the currents still change direction. Divers say visibility drops quickly. There are no markers there, only dark water. The Mont Blanc left no wreck to visit, no hull to survey. Its name appears in maritime records only until the 6th of December, 1917. After that, it is a footnote. The ship itself is gone. The damage it caused is not. Children born that year were told never to go near the Narrows at low tide. The tides were strange, they said. The water moved unevenly. Even now, in the harbour, some say strange sounds rise during storms. A sharp pop, then stillness. The harbour remembers. The vanishing of the Jian Seng. On the 24th of March, 2006, a routine surveillance flight spotted a large ship drifting near the edge of Australia's territorial waters. It was about 180 kilometres southwest of Weipa, in the Gulf of Carpentaria. The aircraft observed no flag, no name, and no visible crew. The ship moved slowly, pushed by the current. Its engines were not running. The Australian Customs Service sent a patrol boat to intercept. When officers boarded the vessel, they found no one aboard. The ship was in poor condition. Rust streaked the hull. The bridge was silent. The power systems were inactive. No radar, no radio signal. There were no signs of struggle, no weapons, no blood. The food supplies were untouched. The cold storage was empty. Water tanks had dried. Engine rooms showed signs of disuse. Control panels were partly dismantled. Some parts of the ship had been stripped. Wires had been pulled from the walls. Batteries were missing. The crew's quarters were bare. Mattresses had been removed. Lockers were open and empty. The ship's logbook was gone. No personal effects were found. Near the stern, officers found long lengths of cable and several large plastic drums. Later, these would be identified as tow lines and ballast drums used to stabilize cargo. There was no cargo left. No identifying documents. Only one name appeared. It was printed in faded characters on a metal plate bolted to the wheelhouse. Jian Seng. The name did not appear in international shipping registries. There was no record of its last port of call. Satellite tracking showed no recent movements under that name. It was not listed as overdue. No nation reported it missing. Australian authorities launched an investigation. They examined hull structure, wiring patterns, and interior layout. These suggested the Jian Seng was likely built in East Asia, possibly in the early 1982nd. It may have been used as a coastal freighter, serving small cargo routes. Experts believe the vessel had been under tow and had broken free. The length of cable on deck supported this. But no towing vessel was identified. No distress signal had been sent. No tugboat reported a missing tow. There were no signs of sabotage. The ship had drifted peacefully. It had entered Australian waters without intent. Tests showed the Jianseng had been adrift for at least several weeks. Barnacle growth on the hull suggested a longer period at sea, perhaps months. Some estimates placed its time adrift at over a year. The ship's condition supported this. Paint had faded on the upper decks. Metal fixtures had corroded. Rainwater had pooled in corners. Paper curled in dry cabinets. Mold had formed in the corners of the galley. No identifying radio frequencies were detected. The ship's automatic identification system was non-functional. The Maritime Safety Authority found no emergency beacons. No flares were stored in the bridge. There was no conclusion about its origin. Speculation followed. Some suggested the ship had been used for smuggling and abandoned. Others believed it had been retired from service and was being towed for scrapping. Without papers, there was no proof. The ship was inspected for hazardous materials. None were found. There were no explosives, no drugs, no signs of human trafficking. The Australian government classified the vessel as a derelict. Salvage was considered uneconomical. The ship posed a risk to other traffic in the Gulf. A decision was made. The Jianseng was towed out to sea and scuttled. No ceremony, no broadcast, no observers. It was sunk in deep water by controlled charges. The exact location was not made public. The ship is gone. It had arrived silently and left the same way. Its time in Australia's waters was brief. A few days. Then it vanished again, this time under the surface. News coverage was minimal. A few articles appeared in regional newspapers. They reported a mystery ghost ship and noted the lack of answers. Officials offered little. The case was marked closed. No claims were filed. No one came forward. No one asked for the ship back. It is unknown how many ships like the Jianseng are lost at sea. Some drift for years. Others are found. Most are forgotten. They do not sink. They wander. They leave no record. Their names fade. Their cargo disappears. The Jianseng was one of these. Its hull may remain intact. It lies on the seafloor, somewhere beyond the continental shelf. No salvage team has returned to look for it. No monuments exist. The name appears only in case reports and short press releases. The Gulf of Carpentaria remains quiet. Fishing boats pass through. Cargo ships skirt the coast. The water is calm. There are no reminders. But sometimes, when weather is still and the sea is flat, a long shape is said to appear briefly beneath the surface. Then it is gone. The captain who never left his ship. On the 20th of December, 1987, the MV Doña Paz departed from the port of Tacloban in the Philippines. It was bound for Manila. The ship belonged to Sulpicio Lines and was a passenger ferry designed to carry 1,518 people. But that night, there were far more on board. Ticket records were incomplete. Many passengers boarded without formal documentation. By later estimates, over 4,000 people were aboard. Families sat on mats in the hallways. Children slept under benches. The weather was calm. The sea was flat. The ship moved at a speed of 17 knots. The Doña Paz had no working radio. It had no life vests for everyone. Fire extinguishers had not been recently serviced. Many of the crew were new. Some had not received formal training. The ship carried no detailed manifest. Still, it departed as scheduled. At around 10:30 p.m., as most passengers were asleep, a tanker appeared on the horizon. It was the MT Vector. It was carrying over 8,000 barrels of petroleum products, including gasoline and kerosene. The tanker had no functioning rudder. Its steering system was compromised. It had only a few crew members on board. The night was dark, the moon was dim. At 10:45 p.m., the two ships collided in the Tabla Strait. The impact was not loud, it did not wake everyone, but within seconds the cargo of the Vector ignited. Flames shot up between the two ships. Fire spread along the decks of the Doña Paz. The steel heated quickly. Windows cracked. Curtains caught fire. The flames moved faster than people could. There was no organized evacuation. The crew did not issue instructions. Some were not at their stations. Lifeboats were not deployed. Many passengers jumped directly into the sea. Others remained in their cabins. Doors had locked shut. Some were trapped by falling beams. The flames reached the fuel lines. Then the fire spread to the oil that had leaked into the water. The sea itself burned. Survivors would later describe the ocean as glowing orange. There was no clear direction to swim. The fire was everywhere. People clung to pieces of wood. Some held on to children. Others floated alone in the dark, surrounded by silence and light. There were no rescue boats. No flares were sent. The Doña Paz had no functioning emergency systems. Nearby vessels were unaware. Hours passed before a distress signal was relayed. The first rescue ships arrived long after sunrise. By then, the Doña Paz had disappeared beneath the surface. The Vector was already gone. Of the more than 4,000 people aboard, only 24 survived. Bodies were recovered over the following days. Most had died from burns or drowning. Many were never identified. The names of hundreds remain unknown. Entire families had travelled together. Entire families were lost. The captain of the Doña Paz, Gallicano Oliver, was never seen again. His name appears on memorials, but his actions during the fire are not recorded. No crew members from the bridge survived. The ship's logs were lost. Its voice recorders were never recovered. Some believe the captain remained on the bridge. Others say he tried to reach the lifeboats. A few claim they saw him near the engine room, but none of these accounts were confirmed. His last known position was listed simply as on duty. In 1988, a formal inquiry was held. It found both ships at fault. The Doña Paz had no lookout posted. The Vector was unseaworthy. Both companies were found negligent. No criminal charges were filed. The disaster became the deadliest peacetime maritime accident in history. In later years, a memorial was built in Capologan. It includes a list of names etched into black stone. Many spaces are blank. The wreck of the Doña Paz was discovered in 1999, 500 meters beneath the surface. It rests on its side. The stern is crushed. The bow is intact. The ship's name is still visible on the hull. Divers have not been sent down. The site is considered sacred. The sea where it sank is calm. Fishing boats pass above it. There are no markers, only water. The air is hot. The tide is steady. Local sailors still speak of the fire. They say it burned without sound. They say it lit up the sky. Some remember the smoke hanging low for days. Others remember the silence that came after. No working image survives of the ship's final moments. No photographs, only words. A captain's duty is to remain with the vessel. No one can confirm where Captain Oliva stood as the flames spread, but his name remains tied to the ship. The Doña Paz sank. He did not return. The signal that repeated for years. In October 1931, the SS Bachimo became trapped in early sea ice off the coast of Barrow, Alaska. It was a steel-hulled cargo steamer built in 1914 Sweden and operated by the Hudson's Bay Company. The ship was used for trading runs between Alaska and the Western Canadian territories, often carrying furs, equipment, and provisions. That autumn, the Bachimo had completed its delivery to the Inuit settlements and was preparing to return to Vancouver. The sea had not yet frozen, but conditions were turning. Temperatures dropped quickly. Winds carried snow inland. By the 1st of October, sheets of ice had formed around the hull. The ship could no longer move. Captain Cornwell ordered the crew to wait. For several days, the ship remained in place, wedged in a growing field of ice. On the 8th of October, a blizzard struck. Visibility dropped. The crew was forced to abandon the ship temporarily and took shelter inland with a group of local Inuit. When the storm ended, the crew returned to find the ship still intact. Supplies were untouched. The engines were cold. They waited. The ice remained. On the 15th of October, the Hudson's Bay Company sent a rescue team by dog sled. The company decided the vessel could not be freed before winter. Most of the crew were evacuated. A small group, including the captain, remained behind in a wooden shelter built on shore. They would wait for spring. On the 24th of November, another storm passed through. The next morning, the Beichimo was gone. The crew assumed it had sunk beneath the ice. They prepared to return south, but days later, an Inuit hunter reported seeing the ship adrift several miles away. The men followed the report and found the Beichimo floating half a day's journey to the northwest. It had broken free. They boarded it again. It was undamaged. The cargo was intact, but the ice was returning. The decision was made. The ship would be left behind. The company marked it as abandoned. The crew returned home. Yet the Beichimo did not vanish. In 1932, it was spotted 250 miles east, near Wainwright. The crew of a trading schooner reported it drifting slowly. They attempted to board it, but were turned back by heavy weather. In 1933, a group of Alaskan natives found it trapped in ice again. They spent several nights on board, using the cabins for shelter. They left behind notes describing food tins still sealed and tools neatly arranged. The ship was intact. From 1934 to 1939, the Beichimo was seen multiple times. The survey team approached it in 1935. They noted that the hull had rusted, some portholes were broken, but the ship remained afloat. In 1939, a group of prospectors boarded the vessel. They salvaged furniture and rope. They found no sign of prior visitors. It appeared untouched. The cargo hold still held some trade goods. World War II interrupted Arctic traffic. Reports stopped for several years. But in 1945, the Beichimo was seen again. A Royal Canadian Air Force pilot flying over the Beaufort Sea noted a long, dark object floating in ice. He identified it as a ship. No other vessel was reported missing in that area. In 1962, an Inuit trapper from Point Hope saw the ship again. He described it as sitting in ice, same place as before. His report was entered into local records. The last confirmed sighting occurred in 1969, 38 years after it was first abandoned. A group of hunters spotted it west of the Prudhoe Bay oil fields. The deck was partially collapsed. Snow covered most of the upper structure. Still, it floated. After that, the Beichimo was never seen again. In 2006, the government of Alaska launched a project to find the ship. They used sonar and aerial surveys. The search lasted 2 months. No trace was found. The sea ice had shifted. The position of the wreck, if it still existed, was unknown. Some believe it finally sank beneath the ice. Others think it remains frozen into the Arctic shelf, unmoving, unreachable. There are no photographs of its last years. Only grainy images from earlier sightings. No part of the ship has ever been recovered. The Beichimo was called a ghost ship. It moved without a crew. It survived harsh winters, storms and waves. It outlived all who served aboard it. No logbook was recovered. No records were updated after 1931. The ship continued without time. It left no distress call. No lifeboats were ever lowered. The last entries in the ship's record remain stored in the Hudson's Bay Company archives, marked incomplete. The Arctic is quiet now. The wind moves across the ice. Modern satellites pass overhead. None have found it. But stories remain. Hunters speak of a sound metal against ice heard in still weather, a bell that swings without motion. Then, nothing. The Beichimo has become part of Arctic memory, a ship that was left behind but would not leave. The explosion in the fog. On the evening of the 25th of July, 1956, the SS Andrea Doria sailed through dense fog off the coast of Nantucket, Massachusetts. The ship was nearing the end of its journey from Genoa to New York. It carried 1,134 passengers and 572 crew members. The sea was calm, the air was thick with moisture. Foghorns sounded every few minutes. The Andrea Doria was a modern vessel. Built in 1951 by the Italian line, it measured 697 feet long. It had 11 decks, twin engines, and a reinforced hull. Its reputation was built on speed and safety. It had radar, lifeboats, and fireproof doors. The interior featured art, wide staircases, and polished brass. Passengers dined under painted ceilings. Children played near the railings. By 10 p.m., most passengers had retired to their cabins. Some remained in lounges, drinking coffee or reading. The fog outside had thickened. Visibility was less than 1,000 feet. The Andrea Doria maintained a speed of 21 knots. Its captain, Piero Calamai, ordered the radar watched closely. Another ship was approaching. That ship was the MS Stockholm, a Swedish liner departing from New York. It carried 534 passengers and crew. It too had radar. It moved east at 18 knots. Both ships were aware of each other. Each saw the other's position on radar, but each interpreted the data differently. At 11:10 p.m., the Stockholm emerged from the fog, 500 feet ahead, starboard side. Neither ship altered course in time. The Stockholm's reinforced bow struck the Andrea Doria near the number 1 lifeboat. Steel folded. A deep gash opened on the starboard side of the Italian liner. The impact tore open 7 decks. Passengers were thrown from their bunks. Lights flickered. Water rushed into the forward compartments. The Stockholm's bow was crushed. 5 of its crew were killed instantly. The Andrea Doria began listing to the starboard side. The list grew quickly. By midnight, it had reached 18 degrees. Lifeboats on the starboard side could no longer be used. Those on the port side became difficult to launch. Crew members attempted to organize evacuation. There was no panic. Many passengers remained unaware of the seriousness. The first distress call went out at 11:20 p.m. Several ships responded. The French liner Île-de-France was nearest. It altered course and arrived just after 2 a.m. Rescue operations began in darkness and silence. The sea was calm. Fog lingered. Searchlights passed across the water. Lifeboats ferried passengers from the Andrea Doria to nearby ships. The wounded were moved first, then children, then families. The crew remained to assist others. Many passengers waited for hours on the sloping decks. By 5:30 a.m., over 1,600 people had been rescued. Some climbed rope ladders. Others were lifted in canvas slings. A few were pulled from the sea by sailors in small craft. The Andrea Doria continued to list. By dawn, its nameplate touched the waves. Its funnels leaned sideways. The ship creaked. Rescue crews moved faster. Helicopters arrived. At 10:09 a.m., the Andrea Doria rolled onto its side and sank. The water swallowed it in 11 minutes. It disappeared below the fog. Its position was marked. No bodies remained aboard. In total, 46 people died. Most were on the Andrea Doria. 5 were children. 11 died at the moment of impact. Others were crushed by falling debris or trapped in cabins. The Stockholm lost 5 of its own. The rest of its passengers were rescued. The wreck of the Andrea Doria now rests at a depth of 240 feet. Its bow faces north. The decks are collapsed. Sea life moves through the dining rooms. Paint has peeled. Steel has corroded. Divers report narrow passages, twisted metal, and silence. It has become known as the Mount Everest of wreck diving. Many have visited. Some did not return. Strong currents and limited visibility make the descent dangerous. Inquiries followed. Investigators studied radar logs and crew testimony. They concluded that both ships misunderstood each other's positions. One had turned to starboard. The other had also turned, expecting a pass to port. The result was collision. No criminal charges were filed. The incident was marked as shared fault. Both ships were found to have made errors. Radar was new, training was limited, procedures were unclear. The Andrea Doria became a symbol of tragedy at sea. Not for the loss of life, but for the loss of trust in technology. The ship had been advanced. It had radar, lifeboats, and crew. Yet it had sunk quickly, completely. The fog returned that evening. The sea resumed its rhythm. The Ile de France returned to port. The Stockholm was repaired. The Andrea Doria remained. Today, the wreck still shifts in the currents. Its hull caves inward. Divers visit it less often. Its story is known, and its rooms are full. The fog above that water has never cleared. The cargo that poisoned the wind. On the 29th of September 2015, the SS El Faro departed from Jacksonville, Florida, bound for San Juan, Puerto Rico. It was a 790-foot cargo ship owned by Tote Maritime. On board were 33 crew members and 391 containers of cargo. The route was routine. The ship had made the voyage many times. Weather reports showed a developing storm near the Bahamas. Its name was Joaquin. The El Faro was built in 1975. It had been converted in the 1992nd to meet modern safety standards. It carried lifeboats, watertight doors, and 2 emergency generators. It also had a satellite phone, radar, and electronic charting. The ship's master, Captain Michael Davidson, had decades of experience. As the El Faro moved south, Joaquin strengthened. The storm, once a tropical depression, was upgraded to a hurricane. Its winds reached 100 miles per hour by the morning of the 30th of September. Satellite imagery showed dense clouds and rising seas. The storm was shifting west. The El Faro maintained course. On board, the crew worked in shifts. Containers were secured. Engines ran normally. At 5:36 a.m. on the 1st of October, Captain Davidson made a satellite call to the company's safety office. He reported the ship had lost propulsion. Water had entered through a breached hatch. The vessel was listing. At 7:30 a.m., the captain reported winds at 100 knots and heavy seas. The ship was taking on water. Pumps were working. The list had increased. He did not request evacuation. At 7:39 a.m., Davidson made his final recorded call. "We're not going to make it." After that, silence. The ship's emergency position, indicating radio beacon, activated at 7:56 a.m. It sent a signal without position data. No further signals followed. The Coast Guard began search operations that afternoon. Over the next 5 days, aircraft and ships scanned 70,000 square nautical miles. On the 4th of October, debris was found: life rings, shipping containers, and oil sheen. On the 5th of October, a damaged lifeboat was recovered. It was empty. The El Faro had disappeared east of the Bahamas, near the eye of the hurricane. All 33 people aboard were lost. No survivors, no bodies. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, launched an investigation. In April 2016, the ship's voyage data recorder was recovered from a depth of 15,000 feet. It held 26 hours of bridge audio. The recording revealed a calm crew. They discussed weather models, course options, and engine function. Early on, there was confidence. Some laughed. Some made coffee. But as wind increased and the list worsened, concern grew. The crew noted flooding. The ship lost propulsion. Without power, steering was impossible. Waves struck the starboard side, containers shifted, a metallic noise echoed across the deck. At 7:29 a.m., the captain said, "Get ready to abandon ship." The last voice on the recording was a crew member shouting, "She's listing!" Then static. Analysis showed the ship had moved into the strongest part of the storm. Forecast models used by the captain were outdated. Satellite data had not been fully relayed. The decision to maintain course had been made with incomplete information. The cargo included cars, frozen meats, and heavy equipment. Some containers were improperly sealed. Investigators found that water had entered through an open scuttle hatch. Once inside, the water shifted the ship's balance. With no propulsion, the vessel could not face the waves. The El Faro sank at 8 a.m. Its hull collapsed under pressure. The debris field stretched across the sea floor. The wreck was upright, but the superstructure was missing. The NTSB report cited inadequate weather data, poor cargo securing, and overconfidence in vessel stability. Recommendations included mandatory real-time satellite updates, improved storm avoidance training, and retrofitting older ships. There was no failure of character, only failures in process. The crew followed procedures. The captain remained on the bridge. No one abandoned post. They waited. Then they were gone. The families of the crew gathered in Jacksonville. A memorial was built near the port. It includes 33 names. Nothing else remains. The ocean where the El Faro sank remains active. Storms pass through. Waves rise and fall. Cargo ships continue the same route. None speak of the wreck below. The wind at sea has no memory. It carries names only briefly. The sail that returned without a crew. On the 5th of December, 1872, the British brigantine DEI Gratia was sailing east of the Azores. Its crew sighted another vessel moving erratically. The sails were partially set, the movement was slow. There was no distress signal, no visible crew. The captain of the DEI Gratia, David Morehouse, approached cautiously. The drifting vessel was the Mary Celeste, a merchant brig, American registered. It had departed New York for Genoa with a cargo of industrial alcohol. The voyage had begun in early November. It was now nearly a month overdue. A boarding party was sent across. They climbed onto the Mary Celeste just after midday. The weather was overcast. The sea was flat. On board, everything was still. The ship was seaworthy. The hull was undamaged. The cargo was intact, 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol. Some had leaked. Most were sealed. The galley was stocked. Meals had been prepared, but left untouched. The crew's clothes remained in their trunks. A sewing machine sat in the captain's cabin. A pipe rested on a desk. Nothing was broken. The lifeboat was gone. The ship's logbook ended on the 25th of November. It recorded a position near Santa Maria Island. That was 10 days before. The entries were normal. No mention of trouble. The handwriting was clear. The Mary Celeste's last known captain was Benjamin Briggs. He was experienced. His wife and 2-year-old daughter were with him. 7 crew members completed the manifest. All were described as reliable. No history of mutiny. No prior disputes. They were all gone. The DEI Gracie's crew sailed the abandoned vessel to Gibraltar. There, British authorities opened a formal investigation. They examined the hull. It showed no signs of collision or grounding. The sails were torn, but not shredded. Water in the bilge was minimal. The pumps were working. The compass was damaged, but the clock was intact. The ship had not been looted. No valuables were missing. No blood was found. No signs of struggle. A cutlass was found in a scabbard. A sword lay under the bed in the captain's cabin. Both were clean. Speculation began. One theory suggested pirates, but no valuables were missing. Another proposed a water spout causing panic and hasty evacuation. Others pointed to the cargo. Industrial alcohol could produce toxic fumes, but no evidence of illness was found. All food was fresh. Water supplies were untainted. A legal inquiry ruled out foul play. No conclusive cause was found. The court awarded salvage rights to the crew of the DEI Gratia. The sum was less than expected. The judge believed the full story had not been told. In the decades that followed, the mystery deepened. Some claimed the crew had staged their disappearance. Others believed they had abandoned ship fearing explosion from alcohol fumes. But the barrels were sealed. The weather was calm. The Mary Celeste was returned to service. She continued to sail under new owners. None reported similar incidents. In 1885, she was wrecked off the coast of Haiti in a failed insurance scam. The hull broke on a reef. The remains were scavenged. The name disappeared from records. The story, however, remained. Writers embellished it. Newspapers printed false versions. Some said the food was still warm. Others claimed a cat was found alive. None of these were supported by the original logs or testimony. Only the facts remain. A ship found adrift. Intact, abandoned, no signs of violence, no distress signals, no bodies. The Mary Celeste's name became shorthand for ghost ships. Its wheel was steady, its rigging held, its people vanished. The Atlantic that December was cold. The wind moved without urgency. The stars were clear. There were no storms in the area. No final note was left. The vessel, under full sail, had drifted for days. It had passed no other ships. No one saw the lifeboat. No one heard a call. The crew's fate remains unknown. No graves were found. No survivors emerged. The ship was the only witness. Its logbook ended with a routine observation. Clear weather, steady wind, smooth seas. Then nothing. The sea did not explain. The engine that kept running. On the 3rd of October, 1955, the MV Joyita left the port of Apia, Samoa, bound for the Tokelau Islands. The trip was expected to take no more than 2 days. The ship carried 25 people, 16 crew, and 9 passengers. Among them were a doctor, a government official, and 2 children. The Joyita also carried mail, medical supplies, and food. The weather was warm, the sea was calm. The Joyita was a 69-foot wooden merchant vessel. It had been built in 1,931-inch Los Angeles. Originally a luxury yacht, it had been converted for wartime service during World War II, and later adapted for cargo. The ship was equipped with 2 engines, though only one was operational. The other had been removed for servicing. The remaining engine was functional but unreliable. The ship left port without a working radio transmitter. The receiver was intact, but the transmitter was damaged. Repairs had been requested, but not completed. The departure proceeded anyway. The Joyita never arrived at Tokelau. By the 6th of October, authorities declared the ship overdue. Aerial searches began. Planes scanned the sea between Samoa and Tokelau. No trace was found. For over a month, nothing was seen. On the 10th of November, a merchant vessel spotted a drifting object 600 miles from its original course. It was the Joyita. The ship was found listing heavily to port. It was partially submerged. The deck was waterlogged. The port engine room was flooded. The starboard side was dry. Cargo was missing. There were no people aboard. The Joyita's life rafts were gone. So were the dinghy and the life jackets. The radio was set to the international distress frequency. The logbook was missing. Clocks had stopped at 10:25. Inside the cabin, a doctor's bag was found. It contained surgical tools and opened bandages. A woman's shoe lay near the galley. A half-eaten meal sat on a plate. The ship's engine was still warm. The hull showed no signs of collision. There were no impact marks. The wooden frame was intact. The flooding was due to a fractured cooling pipe. Water had entered slowly, but the vessel was not sinking. It remained buoyant due to sealed compartments under the floor. Investigators found that despite the listing, the Joyita had remained seaworthy. The engine had stopped at some point, but the lights were still working. The ship had drifted over 1,000 miles in 5 weeks. None of the 25 people aboard were ever found. The missing cargo included medical kits, food, and barrels of oil. Some containers were found floating hundreds of miles away. The watches and navigation tools were gone. So were all personal belongings. Theories followed. Some believed the crew had panicked. The heavy list may have led them to believe the ship was sinking. With no working radio to call for help, they may have abandoned ship, but no lifeboats were ever found. And the Joyita had stayed afloat. Another theory pointed to foul play. One passenger, Dr. Alfred Parsons, was known to travel with narcotics for medical use. Some speculated a hijacking, but no struggle was evident. The doctor's bag was left behind. Valuable cargo remained untouched. A third theory involved insurance fraud, but the value of the ship and cargo was low. No claims were filed. No evidence supported the idea. In later years, survivors of nearby fishing communities recalled seeing a white ship adrift days after the disappearance. But these sightings were not confirmed. The Joyita was recovered and towed back to Samoa. It was repaired and returned to service. But sailors called it cursed. They reported mechanical failures and strange sounds. One captain refused to board. Eventually, the ship was sold for scrap. No inquiry ever produced a conclusion. The official report listed the cause as unknown. The name Joyita means little jewel in Spanish. The ship had survived storms, war, and service across the Pacific. But in 1955, it had been left behind. Its final days remain unrecorded. No voice described the decision to leave. No signal explained the course. The ship returned. Its people did not. The Joyita drifted through a calm sea. It carried no crew. Its engine cooled slowly. Its name faded from the side. It now rests in fragments in a dry harbour. The sea where it wandered remains quiet. The ship that sank twice. In December of 1927, the SS Kamloops departed from Fort William, Ontario, heading east across Lake Superior. It carried 22 crew members and a full load of industrial cargo machinery, food, and leather goods destined for ports on the eastern end of the Great Lakes. The Kamloops was a 250-foot steamship, steel-hulled, built in 1924. It was designed for inland waters, narrow, low in the water, and strong. The ship was last seen on the 6th of December, near Isle Royale. A snowstorm was beginning to form. Winds reached 50 miles per hour. Temperatures dropped. The lake began to ice. The Kamloops disappeared into the storm. Other ships on the lake reported ice forming rapidly on decks and rigging. Visibility dropped. Crews chipped at railings with axes. One freighter, the Queddock, passed within 3 miles of the Kamloops, but lost sight of it. There was no distress signal, no collision, just silence. When the Kamloops failed to arrive at its next port, the Great Lakes Shipping Company launched a search. Planes flew over Isle Royale. Ice covered much of the coastline. The ship had vanished. Spring came. In May 1928, a group of hikers found debris washed ashore on the north side of the island. Boots, a shipping label. a fragment of a lifeboat with the Kamloops name still visible in black paint. That same month, the bodies of 5 crew members were found near the shore. They were frozen, curled under boulders. One held a tin of crackers. Another still wore an engineer's belt. No life jackets. No lifeboat. They had tried to walk across the island, likely seeking help. All had died in the snow. The ship was not found. For decades, the Kamloops became a footnote, listed as lost. Its story recounted in local histories. No wreck was identified. It was assumed to have broken up and sunk in deep water. Lake Superior holds over 10% of the world's freshwater. Its depths reach over 1,300 feet. Wrecks do not always rise. Then, in August 1977, a group of divers searching for another wreck made contact with a structure 260 feet beneath the surface, off the northwest edge of Isle Royale. It was the Kamloops. The ship rested upright on the lake floor. Its hull was intact. The cargo still lay in place: tools, cartons of shoes, bolts of cloth, barrels of syrup, everything preserved in near-perfect condition by the cold, oxygen-poor water. The superstructure had collapsed slightly, but the cabins were sealed. Divers entered slowly. In the engine room, gauges remained readable. Pipes stretched across the walls. Mugs sat on shelves. Coats hung on hooks. In one compartment, the body of a crew member was found. He lay on his side. One hand rested against the wall. His skin had hardened, turned a pale leather colour from the cold. His face remained visible, eyes closed, clothes intact. He had been preserved for 50 years. Divers called him the Frozen Man. They did not move him. He remains inside the ship to this day. Park officials declared the site a protected zone. The Kamloops became a popular but restricted dive. Only certified wreck divers may enter. Conditions are cold. Water temperatures remain near freezing year-round. Visibility varies. The pressure is high. The Kamloops has not deteriorated much since its discovery. Its steel resists corrosion in the freshwater. The cargo remains where it was packed in 1927. Labels still show dates. Packed the 22nd of November, 1927. To be delivered, Montreal. No official explanation for the sinking was confirmed. The best theory holds that ice built up rapidly on the superstructure. The weight may have destabilized the vessel. In high winds and poor visibility, the ship may have struck a submerged rock or capsized, or it simply took on water faster than it could be pumped out. The crew likely abandoned ship near shore. Some made it to land, others did not. But the ship itself did not break, it sank whole. Divers describe the site as silent. Fish do not often pass through. Light filters down in a green haze. Inside the ship, the walls sweat with moisture. Paper curls in drawers. Shoes rest in boxes. A clock sits at 9:03. There is no movement. Each year, the ship is surveyed for changes, little shifts. Some objects have moved. The hull has cracked slightly in one section. The rest remains the same. Time has slowed there. The Kamloops never resurfaced. It was not salvaged. Its cargo never delivered. The company that owned it no longer exists. The families of the crew are gone. Only the ship remains. And the man who stayed with it. Some stories are too deep to recover. The logs are gone. The crews are silent. The water keeps its shape. We look for patterns, but the ocean leaves no explanations. Only metal resting in cold dark. Only questions that echo with no reply. What remains is not the wreckage. It is the stillness. And the way these names drift, almost forgotten. There will always be more. More voyages that never returned. More signals that stopped mid-sentence. And more places where history was lost in open water. If these quiet disappearances speak to you, if you follow the paths that end with no answers, subscribe to the channel. there are more fragments to uncover, more time to drift, and more mysteries waiting just beyond the shore.